Hello, my friends. What does this image remind you of? This is one of the main symbols of Old West Texas. It is an image of cowboys, horses, and Longhorn cattle. Over the centuries, everything has remained intact and developed thanks to the persistent work of the people. In today's video, we go into the interior of Texas to see how farmers raise tens of thousands of long cattle. These Longhorn cattle that seem to reach for the sky are not just pets, but living symbols of Texan heritage and spirit. The good sign is that currently, the number of Longhorn cattle raised increases year by year. This begs the question: why do farmers choose Longhorn cattle to develop their economy? First, an important aspect of Longhorn cattle ranching in Texas is the large pastures. Farmers utilize these vast pastures to provide a natural and sustainable environment for circular Longhorn cattle. Depending on the season and pasture, Longhorns will follow a similar schedule. Every day they are foraging, chewing, resting, and traveling on the same path. Their behavior is quite predictable. This is an advantage for shepherds as they seek out their Longhorn flocks and make grazing easier. Despite their large size and majestic appearance, these Longhorn cattle are generally quite docile and easy to handle. A herd of Longhorn cattle advanced mixed with images of small calves. You know, Texas is a land with a harsh climate. However, this does not harm the vitality of these cattle. Longhorn, their healthy condition allows them to survive and produce generations of livestock. Long, strong corn how? These farmers accompanied the Longhorn cattle from the farms to the new ones. Experienced cattle ranchers in Texas feel they have a responsibility to preserve the genetic diversity of this Longhorn cattle species. They do this by breeding every year with the hope that each generation will retain the distinctive characteristics of Texas Longhorn cattle. See, these healthy calves are the result of this one. Farmers say that female Longhorn cattle are able to conceive while they are still nursing. It is also possible to give birth to a calf and raise it without help before the age of 16 months. Therefore, in the process of raising Longhorn cattle, farmers do not need to participate. On this farm, farmers raise Longhorn cattle mixed with goats, but do not have many difficulties in choosing pasture areas. They often prioritize herding goats in areas with good grass. Then take the Longhorn cattle to the field like this. In fact, they are quite tolerant and do not require much. Even in pastures that goats do not like, Longwood cattle can still enjoy comfortably and grow well. Thanks to this, farmers on this farm can save on feed costs and not waste too much time looking for distant pastures. In difficult situations, such as drought, Longhorn cattle can still survive in the steppes. The farmer, who owns a herd of about 150 Longhorn cattle, said they are even capable of consuming ragworts. The toxicity of this weed does not affect the health of Longhorn cattle at all. As you look at the many breeds of cattle today, you'll see that most have very similar shapes and designs. But you won't find two Longhorns that are the same in Texas. They are all truly unique. No two are alike in color, body, or horn shape. All create a beautiful grassland scene. You can see that the horns of cattle with long horns are quite thin and curved outwards like this. Of course, in addition to being unique, these horns are also quite dangerous. Farmers say that when they reach maturity, the antlers can reach a length of 1, 2 to 2, 5 m or even more. They have a slower maturation rate than other breeds. Female Longhorn cattle reach a maximum weight of 800 to 1,500 pounds in about 8 to 10 years. Meanwhile, the Longhorn male cattle can weigh between 1,802 and 1,200. In some areas, Longhorn cattle are sought after for their lean meat yield, which is lower in fat and cholesterol than other types of beef cattle. These Longhorn cattle are valued for their quality, although they do not require as many food sources as other cattle species. In addition to meat farming, Longhorn cattle can also be trained to perform in local parades like this one. The presence of these animals demonstrates the pride and connection that Texans have with their heritage. You see, their large appearance combined with their sharp horns makes farmers a big headache when designing barns. Farmers often choose outdoor structures like this for ventilation and also ensure that each Longhorn cattle has 250 square feet of barn space. As on this farm, each cage area holds only about 10 animals, so that they can move around easily and limit the risk of injury to each other. In addition, the fence is built firmly and securely to prevent cattle with long horns from wandering around. The gate area was also designed by farmers to be large enough for longwood cattle to easily enter and exit in this manner. Every morning, farmers prepare for a long and strenuous day's work. The work begins with checking the health and condition of the cattle. Then they can roam the cattle. The afternoon will be the time when the farmers and the Longhorn cattle will return to the barn. They are checking their quantity and status before finishing the day's work. While Texas Longhorns can live on almost any grassland, farmers strive to create sustainable breeding environments for them to thrive. An effective method often applied by farmers is pasture rotation. You're seeing a herd of Longhorn cattle on the move. They crawl through a small forest to reach another reach. Farmers want to avoid overgrazing and maintain a diverse source of fodder for Longhorn livestock. Longhorn cattle are naturally resistant to the most common cattle diseases and parasites, including the worst enemy of free-range cattle, the. This means that farmers can use any type of pasture for grazing and don't need a lot of fertilizers or herbicides. As a result, Longhorn cattle have become an ideal choice for Texas ranchers who need tough and adaptable cattle. West Texas is famous for its harsh and dry climate, and farmers often face natural challenges like drought, heat, and high winds. This affects natural food sources and forces farmers to take preventive measures such as hay storage to ensure the health of Longhorn cattle. Farmers only need to choose lush grass fields to harvest after mowing. They often leave the grass in the field, relying on natural heat to dry. These machines will collect dry grass from the field and create grass blocks like this on this farm. Rolls of hay or straw like this will be prepared by farmers from late spring, then stored and used until the end of the year. Coming into central Texas, consecutive days of snow falling to freezing levels can be a concern for long livestock. Therefore, preparing food for the snow and ice season is also very important to prevent Longhorn cattle from having to travel far to find food. Farmers store hay around the farm. When the snow falls, just bring straw and spread it out so that the Longhorn cattle have a quality meal in the cold winter. In addition to feed, farmers should also be mindful of the health of longwood cattle. When the hoof grows too large, it can hurt and cause infection. Therefore, farmers should regularly trim the hooves of their Longhorn cattle to avoid these problems. In addition to care and grazing, it is important for farmers to consider the market demand for Longhorn cattle, because understanding the needs and preferences of potential buyers can ensure a profitable investment. True, compared to Longhorn cattle, some other breeds of cattle, such as Angus, can bring higher livestock performance, especially in providing high-quality meat, enjoyed by many people. Therefore, many farmers may prioritize cattle breeds that offer the highest economic performance. Longhorn cattle are not commonly bred because they do not generate much profit. However, some farmers still continue to raise them, because for Texas farmers, raising Longhorn cattle is not only a source of income, but also an important part of the local culture. In the remote prairies of West Texas, Longhorn cattle graze, testifying to the enduring spirit and patience of the. Although the catch is life-threatening, cod, a seemingly common fish, has played a crucial role in the economies and cultures of many nations for centuries. In the United States, cod became one of New England's largest exports, accounting for 35% of the region's income during the 16th and 1700s and threatening the fishing industry. This economic competition caused tensions that eventually contributed to the American Revolution. Similarly, in Russia, cod has been an essential factor in the national economy and livelihoods of many coastal communities. In 2005, Russia became one of the 9 largest cod centers in the world. In 2022, the cod fishing industry generated over $193 billion for Russia, with Burmansky emerging as a major fishing port and one of the largest fish processing hubs in Europe. The U.S. also fishes for cod, but not the same types of cod species as Russia. Russian fishermen concentrate on Atlantic cod living in the Barents Sea, the largest cod fishery in the world, which borders Norway and Norway exclusively. These fish are also found in the waters of the ETUA, most commonly in Georges Bank and the western Gulf of Maine. But commercial landings of Atlantic cod in Zirapira totaled only 500 tons and were valued at $2.3 million. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Fisheries Administration's database. This is because it will be the good one for us. Pacific cod is inherently more abundant here than Atlantic cod, although both types of cod live 300 to 800 feet deep on bottoms with coarse sediments. Atlantic cod is sweeter, larger, and lives longer for more than 20 years. These differences influenced both fishing techniques and market preferences. Atlantic cod is more in demand, but this preference has led to a decline in its population since the 1970s, due to overfishing. In 2008, the world caught 765,000 t of Atlantic cod, 73% of which came from Russia, Iceland and Norway, but its number of commercial catches fell to 100,000 t in 2020 and 61,000 t in 2023, despite the 200,000 t quota. Fishing has long been a traditional industry in Russia, as the world's largest country has the world's 4th longest coastline, access to 12 seas and more than 2 million rivers. Thus, Russian fishermen have innovated their fishing processes in various ways to restore and maintain cod stocks. One of them includes dwarf Atlantic cod fisheries from May to November, when they spawn up to 9 million eggs and turn into adult fish. They also reduce the catch quota for this species, encouraging fishermen to fish for Pacific cod in the Northwest Pacific Ocean. more than $3 trillion has been invested in new ships, including trawlers nearly 300,000 feet long, to support these sustainable practices. However, little did everyone know that safety is not always guaranteed, but we will talk more about that later. Preparing for a cod fishing trip on a huge trawler like this can take a few months. The chef on board manages hundreds of kilos of food. Because these large trawlers will only return to the coast for 2 to 3 months. The captain and engineers check the machinery and fuel, ensuring that the engines deliver over 5,000 horsepower to withstand the winds and waves of the Atlantic. The fishing grounds are usually about 2,000 nautical miles from Porto, and the trawler has to stop several times to catch more fishermen. This initial phase can last up to a week, during which the crew checks all the cables and attaches the sensors that will show the captain how the net is passing above ground. In the fishing ground, the captain uses sonar to locate schools of cod. It then tells crews to slowly lower the nets to a depth of 300 m, a process that takes about 30 minutes. Several hours passed and the captain finally received the signal from the sensors. This means that the net is full and ready to be hoisted. However, false signals sometimes happen through uncoated objects. Nerves are high. In this trawler, the total allowed catch quota is 900 t. If the crew does not meet this quota, upon returning to the coast, the voyage will be considered a failure. When pulling nets, fishermen must coordinate carefully, because their wages depend on the quantity of fish. In these large trawlers, even a small mistake can cause hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage and time hazards. You can see from the fishermen's faces that it is a great fishery. 15 t of fish, with the help of the crane, tests hundreds of thousands of fish are quickly dumped into the fish receivers to proceed with the second throw. Fish receivers transport them directly to the onboard processing area. Here they are gutted, cleaned and frozen in these molds to form large cubes. This process has to be fast, otherwise the fish will start to degrade. If there are about 10 fish in 1 carrot, 3, and they will be totally frozen 13, say a thread, in 3 hours. Hundreds of thousands of fish must be processed while fresh, so the fish processing plant operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in shifts. No part of the fish is wasted. For example, heads and tails are often sold to China and other Asian countries. After that, the fish will be packed and stored in an onboard warehouse with a capacity of 900 tons. During this time, the captain constantly reports detailed catch information to the distributors. Sometimes they will be sold directly to other crews who are returning to Earth. After 55 days at sea, this Russian trawler transports about 850 t of cod and returns to the port of Norway before returning to Russia. 10% of fresh fish is sold to Norway and most of the remaining frozen fish is exported to China, South Korea, the Netherlands, and Japan. However, cod fishing is not always good navigation, because all sorts of things can go wrong. Storms and snow can cause slips, so the deck where the fish are hoisted is sprayed with salt water to prevent it from freezing. Fishermen also have to wear safety harnesses to avoid injury, because surgery on board can be difficult to perform. Running out of fuel or equipment breakdowns in the open sea are also significant challenges. If not promptly addressed, it can lead to significant losses, such as the deterioration of hundreds of tons of stored fish. But this is still not the worst case. In 2020, the fishing trawler, the Nika de Bandera Russian, sank north of the Barents Sea, leaving more than 17 people missing. The accident occurred due to the accumulation of ice, causing it to capsize while the crew pulled the nets with the fish. Given the vulnerability of the Atlantic cod population, Russian fishing fleets also fish for Pacific cod in the waters around the Kamchatka Peninsula and the Okhotsk Sea. In addition to the fish market, fresh fish is often transported to processing plants in Murmansk to make klip. Fisk is a traditional dried and salted cod product popular in Norway, Iceland, and the Faroe Islands. Upon arrival at the factory, the fish are filleted. Then, they are stacked in layers with salt between each layer for 3 to 4 weeks. The factory uses hundreds of tons of salt every day for this purpose, ensuring that the fish is heavily salted to draw out moisture and improve preservation and flavor. The salted fish then moves on to the next stage, which is drying. It is placed in well-ventilated areas, often for several weeks to complete the drying process, and packaged. One of the most famous dishes of the Fisk klip is cod, a stew that combines the rich flavors of fish with tomatoes, onions, and potatoes.